everybody, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. So it's not very often that I sit down and film like an intro, and I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet for this class, but I'm filming this video and intro on the 22nd of December, so it's really in the festive Christmas spirit. For this class I'm going to teach you how to draw this really sweet, you have to excuse the sunlight creeping in, this lovely festive Christmas bauble, just using the Faber Castell Polychromos. So all the materials that you need in the description box below is a PDF file that you download. It's got the reference photo, the line art, and all the materials that I've used, and a couple of suggestions if you want to kind of expand your colour palette. There's a lot of different elements in this class, from colour theory to layering. I'm using dark grey pastel mat, which is a surface that lends itself beautifully to blending and layering and mixing colours. So really hope you enjoy this one. If you've taken part in any of my other drawing challenges or masterclasses over the past 2024, then I just want to say a massive thank you. It means the world to me. I really hope you enjoy this class. Let's go.
Hello and a very Merry Christmas to you. Even if you're watching this in the future, I wish you a very merry day then. So thank you so much for clicking on this video. So in this masterclass tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how I would approach a drawing like this. Obviously we're working on a red festive Christmas bauble. Now it's completely up to you what paper you use for your drawing, and also what pencils you use. One of the things I would recommend is creating like a swatch sheets. These are what I call my swatch sheets of any pencils that you have. So I categorize mine into colours, and it just makes it really easy to kind of find out what colours roughly we need to use. So whenever we're working with coloured pencil, one of the things that we need to be aware of is that we need to be choosing a surface that can hold a lot of layers, because a lot of the time we kind of have to blend our colours together in order to achieve the right shade and hue that we want. So for this class I'm going to be using Clairefontaine dark grey pastel mat. Now using a dark grey surface like this should really allow the pencils to just pop off the paper, and it should create a really lovely vibrant sort of drawing. There's a few elements that's going to help with this. Sorry, I'm just clearing up my desk as I go. There's a few elements that's going to help with this. The first being a bit of colour theory. So as you can see in this reference photo, there's some bright areas and some dark areas. Now, one of the things that I don't personally like doing is using that much black in my drawings. So I will look at this reference image and think, okay, well, there's the brighter areas here, so there's some real dark shadows here. If we look at the colour wheel, what are sort of the opposite colours away from red? Well, reds and oranges tend to be like blues and not purples, but going towards sort of like this darker shade, we're going to have a lot of like that cooler feel to it. So it's going to be a blue sort of shade, deep dark blue, to really emphasise that shadow. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much more because I'm just going to get started drawing and explain things as we go. I'm going to try and make this class as easy to follow as possible by just using, hopefully, just the Polychromos pencils, because I think they're the pencils that are most accessible to us, and a lot of the time we don't need to be working with lots of different brands and shades of pencils. If you've got the Pablos, they work beautifully on this surface, but they're not essential. So I've got a couple of pencils to hand here. I'm going to go for some reddy hues, a couple of like pinky salmony kind of colours, a yellow, a white, black, and a dark indigo. Again, all from the Polychromos range. I'm going to see how we get on with these. Obviously this is just for the bauble. I haven't thought about the little bit of gold up here yet, but yeah, I really hope you enjoy this class, and let's get to it. So when I'm working on a surface like this, I'm always going to try and look for the darkest elements, because in my head, if I can get those darkest elements in first, then it's going to make it a lot easier for me to establish where the lighter areas need to be, and also how light they need to be. So I'm just going to start my initial very light layer, and when I say a light layer, let me just demonstrate what I mean by that. I've got a bit of copy of paper here, just regular paper. So when I'm kind of putting in these initial light base layers, especially on a surface like this where it can take a lot of layers, but we're going to have to mix a lot of colours in order to get our desired result, and also to get rid of that scratchy feel and the graininess. So when I'm working in a light layer, that's all I'm doing. So I'm really not pressing, if I just move that out of the way, I'm really not pressing hard or really pushing into the paper. I'm holding my pencil quite far back. And hopefully you can see how lightly I'm pressing. So I'm really trying to maintain a very light feel to this. It's quite a bright day here today, so I think the sun's gonna start shining through, or it's already starting to shine through. So I'm gonna have to close the curtains in a minute. But basically, I am just, as I said, just gonna start to sort of layer in a little bit. I completely haven't told you the colour I'm using. This is dark red. So dark red, which is the shade 225. And one of the things I'm going to do is just find a putty eraser, and then I'm just going to tap on the edges of my line art, or tap over my line art, just to lighten them up a little bit. And just gently taking this all the way to the edge. Now, one of the things I can see in the reference photo is that it does get a little bit lighter over the edge. So I think, and it's almost got like a pinky, orangey, fleshy kind of colour to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of cinnamon, and again, just working this in a same sort of light layer, but a little bit more controlled. I've slowed everything down to really try and help me just get into those fine sort of edges, so I don't go over the line art, or over the edge I should say. So it was the shortest day of the year yesterday. I'm filming this on the 22nd of December. So the sun is super low in the sky, and so I've just closed the curtains a little bit. So I'm just taking a bit more of the dark red again, and this is just going to be a real sort of slow process of just building up the layers. Now, one of the things that I really struggle with for many years when learning to draw with coloured pencils is how to really make your work realistic, because it's super easy to sort of think, as a red bauble, just want to use reds, and that's literally, that's not really the case, because you could do that, but it's then going to end up looking like this. And if we just continue just to build, even though this is dark red, and technically there's not really, especially around the Polychromos, there's no colour that kind of comes darker than this on the sort of red shade sort range. So we need to learn how to darken our colours without going in with with black, and that's where a bit of colour theory comes in, which I'll come on to in a minute. So I'm just going to continue just to layer in a little bit of cinnamon towards the edge. And the beautiful thing about the pastel mat as a surface is that you can layer this over the top. All we're doing is pressing very lightly, but you can just keep sort of blending lots and lots of layers. You can blend a lot of like the lighter colours over the top. You can blend some of the darker colours. And obviously with every layer you put down, we are smoothing the tooth. We're smoothing that sort of that texture, because it feels a bit chalky underneath. Like if you imagine, I've seen someone refer to drawing on pastel mat as drawing on a chalkboard, and it is a little bit similar. And I know a lot of people, it's quite a controversial surface. Like not everyone loves it, but I do think it's definitely got its purpose. It's a beautiful surface to use when you get it right. So I'm going to just look at taking some of the Caput Mortem, which is a sort of slightly darker reddy brown, like purpley shade. And I'm just going to layer this into some of those darker areas still. Now, I don't know whether this is going to work or be the right shade or colour at all, but this is, again, one of the beautiful things about a surface. We can just layer and sort of play around with colours. It doesn't have to be perfect. You could also use a bit of the Caput Mortem Violet, which is just going to give you that sort of deeper, reddy, sort of purple. And just gently sort of taking this towards the edge as well. And even though over the top of where we've put the cinnamon, I'm just going to take a little bit more of the dark red. And the reason being, as I said, if you work with a very, very light pressure, you can kind of blend the light areas back into the slightly darker ones. Or, I'm just tracking colours in here now, but you could use, I've got a bit of the permanent carmine, which is a bit brighter. And again, just layering over the top to just blend. Because the thing is, when we're drawing anything that's spherical, and this goes for even like animal eyes or noses, there's never any harsh lines. So we really don't want to be pressing hard over towards the edge. We really want just to maintain that really light sort of layering and light pressure. If I pressed super hard over the edge, would create a really harsh line, and it wouldn't look natural. We need this to look like it's sort of going into the background, which is why we aren't going to take these dark colours all the way to the edge, again, because it will look flat. We need to create that curvature, which means that we need to create the illusion of, a bit of shine here and there as well. So again, just before we go too much further, I just want to just lightly, very, very lightly, bring in a little bit of the dark indigo from the, again, Polychromos. This is only Polychromos at the moment, and hopefully will be for the duration of this class. Again, just maintaining an even lighter pressure for these top layers. I'm barely letting my pencil touch the surface. It doesn't need to on pastel mat. And I really like to use small circular motions. And the reason why I draw in small circular motions and don't always just go back and forth, again, let me demonstrate on a white bit of paper. If we go back and forth, what tends to happen is we get quite harsh edges at the end. We work in circular motions, especially, you'll notice it doesn't really matter too much when we're working on pastel mat, because again, where it's textured surface, it sort of just splays out the pigment a little bit. But when we're working on a smooth surface, one of the things, it's not going to let me do it on here, is it? We create almost like the ability just to keep blending and layering over those edges, and you can't ever see where it starts and finishes, so it almost creates a much smoother transition. And again, we can just use lots and lots of layers of this and then go back in with, you know, a bit more of the reds, a bit of purple maybe. Okay, that's giving me what I want. And then, as I said, we can kind of just go back in with a bit of the carmine, not carmine lake, sorry, the Caput Mortem violet. And again, just taking some of the dark red again. Again, one of the really great things about this surface is that I can sort of just go in with like a bit of the Caput Mortem violet on its own, and even though this is quite a dark pencil, I can obviously go over if I need to with a bit of like a lighter shade. It'll bring it out beautifully. I have got my bulldog underneath the table. I've got my spaniel who's behind me and my English bulldog underneath my desk. So if he starts snoring, I will try and stop him. But when he gets going, oh my goodness me, he is so loud. So, and he loves to sleep. So I'm just going around, as you can see, with a bit of the Caput Mortem violet. Now, when I'm working on quite dark areas like this, I don't really necessarily need to remove the line art, because it should just, I only remove the line art if I'm working on an area that I think is going to be lighter than the line art, because I don't want that line art to be obvious and show through. Because it can often, especially not necessarily when working on pastel mat, but working on any other surface, it can just make it look a little bit muddy to have that line showing through. So I just like to kind of keep a very light pressure. We're just going to take and blend and mix into these more reddy areas with a bit of the dark red. And you'll notice I'm leaving those light areas at the moment. And that's because, again, I really want to make sure that I'm getting in the dark areas as dark as they need to be, because it's going to make it a lot easier to establish the light areas. Sometimes if we work in the other direction, so if we work on these light areas the most first, it can be really, really difficult to get the darks dark enough, because sometimes we overwork the light areas, which can often result in quite a flat looking drawing. So again, that's why I tend to always focus on the dark areas first. So just using a very light pressure. And again, into these sort of darker reddy areas, we're just going to take some of the Caput Mortem violet. Another little sort of tip or suggestion I have is, when you pick your colours, especially if you've done swatch sheets like I said, and your swatch sheets are on a light paper, i.e. white like mine are, then when you pick colours, it can be really easy just to you pick colours to the reference photo from the white bit of paper. When you start drawing on a darker surface like this, you might notice that I thought I was going to need Caput Mortem. And I think I'm actually going to I'm working a lot more with the Caput Mortem violet, because it just looks quite different when we're putting the pencil down on this surface. So again, just going to come down with the dark red. Again, just layering it in very, very gently. Being very careful as we come towards the edge. If we're aiming for like a lighter pinkier red, which is sort of what I'm seeing at the bottom, and again, you don't have to get your colours accurate straight away, but for that, if I'm seeing it being a little bit brighter, then I'm going to use a little bit of the permanent carmine. Just again, very light pressure, putting this in, blending it probably with a little bit of the dark red. And then over the top, obviously we need to be blending this lovely sort of deep purpley shade, which is the Caput Mortem Violet. And just like the edges, whenever we're thinking about transitioning into those lighter highlighted areas, we want to ensure that our transitions are super, super smooth. We don't want there to be the harsh lines, because again, it's just not going to look realistic. There's no harsh lines when we're drawing in highlights or shine or anything at all. So we want everything to be very like smoothly blended. And again, this is all possible just with using lots and lots of layers and making sure they're very, very light. So we're still working on those darkest bits at the moment. So again, for these slightly lighter edges, we can just maybe go in and use a very, very light pressure of the cinnamon over the top. Again, just very, very lightly, and just making sure that we are sort of blending it inwards to kind of create that really lovely natural sort of blend. And then again, just using more of the Caput Mortem Violet to build up. Again, just using a bit of the dark red, just lightly towards the edges, and just sort of, when I'm sort of working in like towards the edge over here, I'm trying to maintain that really sort of quite sharp but light edge. And then to get it to be nice and blended, I'm just almost like just glazing my pencil outwards. And because the surface is really textured, it just sort of splays the pencil out a lot. So this is why, again, this technique sort of working very light layers like this works really well on this surface. And then we're just going to use a very small circular motion as we start to think about coming in towards the shadow. Well, not the shadow, but the highlighted areas. And again, we're just going to use a little bit of the putty eraser just to remove the harshness of the line art there. And then again, a little bit more of the deep red, just lightly glazing, using small circular motions over the edges. And then we're just going to come down. So we're going to sort of just leave the highlighted areas at the moment. Just finish off sort of the base of the bauble so we're not jumping around too much. And again, just taking a little bit more of the dark red, just gently just bringing it in. Again, just going over the edges here. So when I'm working towards the edges, I'm trying to find, you'll notice that your pencil will have almost like a sharper point. So one of the sides, especially if you've been working sort of with this whole circular motion, there will be sort of a slightly blunter edge. So just rotate it till you find where it feels like you can get a bit of a finer line, and then use that side to go into your edges. And again, it's gonna help them just appear a lot more crisp and smoother. And then again, you can just layer lightly to build everything up. And again, just some of the could put more some violet just over, just to bring in that deep sort of reddy hue, bit of shadow. So light layers just to blend over that grain. I'm just gonna layer it over gently. Voice is like really raspy today. So again, just always trying to ensure we're keeping that very light sort of pressure. And you can use we're going to play around with layering over colours a bit later on, because there are ways and means to really pull this out and really make it pop. But for now, obviously, we're still working on building up almost our foundations before we start to really work in a bit of colour theory to make it all come together. So again, just gonna maintain and just keep with the, could put Morton Violet. And then again, just layering in a little bit more of the deep red. To the slightly lighter areas. And again, there are so many different things and options and ways we can sort of make areas darker. So that's why I'm sort of, even though obviously I'm making this area down here darker, I put it in a little bit later to ensure that I'm getting the values correct everywhere else, and then it means I don't overwork even like the mid-tone areas. So it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, and as I said right back at the start, we can use a bit of the dark indigo, small circular motions, just layer over the top, and again this is really going to help bring in that deeper, darker colour without going in with black, because black would just make this look really, really muddy. So again, small, tiny circular motions. And especially like over up this side, this is where we've got that really, really lovely deep dark shadow. So we're going to really try to bring in as much depth as possible. But again, just not pressing too hard. We're just going to use the different colours and layering. So continuing with the dark indigo to really build this up, and hopefully like we can see how much it's coming together now. And then we're just going to blend a little bit more of the dark red. And like a bit more Morton. again, just maintaining that really light, lovely pressure. And you know, you can lay it over the top where we've put in the dark indigo as well, and it will sort of go over it. But again, this is all about sort of adding lots of layers in order to build up the depth and the correct depth of colour that we're after. So again, always just maintain that very light pressure. And then in those slightly brighter areas, just going to take a little bit more of the deep red over the top. And again, I'm never stopping from using that really light circular motion. So just beginning to think about coming into these lighter areas where the highlight is. Focusing on sort of, I'm noticing now that this highlight here is a lot closer to this, and there's still a lot of like that deep purple over this side. So I'm just going to layer more of the Caput Mortuum in. Again over here, just to ensure we're getting a bit more of that richer, deeper purple. And again, just lightly layering a bit of the dark indigo over the top. And when it comes to really making sure we are keeping our edges looking very, very light, one of the things I really am always trying to do is exactly what I said over here. So we're starting off, when we want to work in an area and sort of really increase the depth, we're going to work with in quite a close sort of motion. When we're trying to sort of create that gradient, I'm just going to sort of come away and just use small circular motions like that, which looks weird on white paper, but because, as I keep saying, this paper grips so well, it almost creates that really natural looking gradient, which is exactly what we're after. But you have got to maintain just a really, really light pressure throughout this. So one of the things that I would suggest looking into as well is when we're working on this really, really light area, I'm going to just I'm going to use a little bit of multiple different colours. One of the colours I'm going to start off by thinking about using to kind of increase that brightness would be a little bit of orange. And using a little bit of orange, and this is just the dark cadmium orange by the Luminance. What this is going to help us achieve is a lot of contrast against the kind of cooler blue of the dark indigo. So despite the fact that it's hard to maintain it, it's hard to see in the reference photo whether we want to go for like a pink or a bit more of an orange. But when we're working with colour theory, like we're doing here, to really sort of increase the depth, I think using a little bit of orange is really going to help. And as I keep saying, if we don't get it right, it's not the end of the world. We can just sort of just go over it. So I'm just taking a very light pressure of the orange going around. Again, ensuring keeping enough of the dark indigo. Well, another colour we could use as well would be a little bit of the cinnamon over the top of the orange. And again, one thing we always want to do when we're working on in these light layers is just make sure that we are not sort of pressing too hard, because we do want to just maintain that really light sort of gradient and that really light blend. So again, just light, small, gentle pencil strokes. And then we could use like a little bit of the Carmine Lake over the top, just to smooth out those edges again. And again, if it still feels a little bit scratchy underneath, then we just need to add a couple more layers. So I'm going between using a bit of the Carmine Lake, I'm sorry, not Carmine Lake, the permanent Carmine, and the Caput Morton Violet. Just beginning to sort of build up a little bit more of the depth. And then a little bit more of the dark indigo. So this is the time when I start to sort of pull out other colours, like, and it doesn't always have to be matching the reference photo. So you can kind of use a bit of like an orange. I've just pulled out some of the middle purple pink, just because I want there to be a little bit more contrast against the blues, and obviously purple and blue work really well together. So this can help just elevate, and again, just create a little bit more of sort of a bit more of a diversity of colour. And again, it's a lot of the time it would be like the reflection. Now there isn't an awful lot of reflection in this bauble. Obviously we've got these lighter areas through here, but we can just add a little bit more interest, maybe with a bit of orange, or you can take a little bit of like a pinky purple like I'm doing here, and just sort of adding a little bit of something just gives it a little bit more flair, and it just works beautifully against the sort of blues in the reference photo. And when we won't notice that we need to sort of darken up going up here, so we can sort of add a little bit more of the Caput Morton Violet. And just using very light pressure. Because at the top here, we've almost got like a little bit of an orangey reflection, and it gets a little bit darker above, and then we've almost, when just below the like where the gold is, we've got like another little bit of like a shadowy sort of area with some gold, with some a bit of like a cool shadow. So again, just going to increase that sort of blue hue with darkened grey. Another thing you could do is maybe just adding a little bit of cold grey. This is just cold grey 3. Insert any of those areas that have got a little bit more of a cooler sort of brightness. Or sort of, it looks a little bit like a glaze, like a cool glaze. Again, this is almost like final finishing touches. So I'm just going to just place in a little bit more of the dark red, just gently into these areas. Maybe a little bit just straight through into this real highlight. Just to bring in a bit more, or a bit of a base, and then we're just going to take a little bit of the cinnamon, maybe, again this is where you can kind of just pull out and have a little bit of fun with layering. I'm going to use a little bit of orange. And then just starting to maybe actually as well, like a bit of the carmine, the permanent carmine, just to bring out that pinky red, and layering it gently over where we put those other colours. So we're using this as almost like a bit of a transition between those dark and light areas. Put it up there as well. And then again, we're just going to lightly layer a bit more of the Caput Morton Violet just over the edges, and then just keep sort of blending the reds over the top. Just again, it's just all of these layers, even though it looks a little bit difficult and a bit hard at the moment, it's all these little layers that bring everything together. So again, we're just going to lightly glaze in with a bit more of the orange. Making sure that we're going over where we've put the other colours as well. Again, because it's really going to help bring out that real nice reflection. And then again, over the edges, we're just going to take a bit more of the dark red. So one of the things that you might notice, which is one of the most annoying things about the surface, is that you might feel and see that you've still got a little bit of like the line art underneath, and that's not a problem. That's just a case of we just need to add a few more layers to get rid of that. And then maybe just taking a little bit more of the cinnamon, just gently. Again, it's still feeling really grainy under hand. That's because I haven't put enough layers down yet. Or you can leave it like this, because from a distance it looks absolutely fine, to be honest. But I do think, again, just to kind of get rid of the graininess or the line art that you can kind of see poking through underneath, we can just take a little bit more of the bit more some violet. And then again, just a bit more of the orange, dark cadmium orange. You could maybe even go in with like a little bit of cream instead of the cinnamon. Again, it just depends on your own personal preference and like how much sort of reflection you're trying to achieve in this bauble, because we are just working in some of those lighter areas. Put a little bit of that down, just maybe taking a bit more of the permanent carmine just over the edges again, just to get them nice and blended. Maybe again a little bit more dark cadmium orange. And then again, we're just going to take a little bit of the middle purple pink over some of these sort of lighter edges. And again, it's just going to help bring in that real sort of lovely kind of purpley edge. And then again gently, just to make sure that we are keeping and maintaining the soft edges of the darker areas, and just lay it in a little bit more of the dark indigo. Then we're just going to take a little bit more of the dark red at the top here. And just adding a little bit of the dark cadmium orange. And probably a little bit of the Caput Morton violet just to blend out those edges. Just don't want it to be like obviously really, really orange. I'm just going to maybe blend a little bit more of the dark indigo. And again, a bit more of the dark cadmium. Red. Sorry, the dark red. When it comes to adding enough depth, that's where I'm really going to look at using a bit or a fair bit of the dark indigo to get those really lovely sort of purpley shadows and sort of contrast in. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of the middle purple pink as well. And we have got that sort of a little bit of a lighter brightness at the top here, so I'm just going to use a little bit of the dark cadmium orange. Just to gently blend, and then again just coming back in with the dark indigo to work on that contrast. Okay, so when it comes to the like gold bit up here, I'm just gonna gently just take a little bit of black just so I can work out where these lines need to go. So I think I've kind of drawn a little bit too. I just need to really redefine the detail here. That would do. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm gonna start to use a little bit of raw umber from the Polychromos, and you can see that on one side of sorry, what am I trying to say? So you can kind of see that there are obviously a lot of dark areas and some light areas, and I'm just trying to work out exactly what colours to use. There is a couple of colours here like green gold, which might be a good colour to use as well if I can find it. So like what we were doing before, we just need to sort of play around with different colours until we find what works. This is just the initial base layer. This is quite yellowy, so I'm not sure about this colour just yet. You might even, you can just kind of bring it into the sort of body of the bauble, just to increase a little bit of that sort of golden reflection, if you wish. Yeah, I'm not sure that this is going to be the most appropriate colour. I think possibly going back to what I was doing before, so a bit of raw umber. Maybe if we combine the two, is that going to work? Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a case of just blending, because there is a fair bit of detail. So we're just focusing once more on the darkest areas. And then again, just taking and focusing, just trying to work out some of the shapes, because it can be really difficult to sort of figure out exactly how to approach an area like this. So just gonna start by focusing on the darkest details at the moment. And then just to make them that a little bit darker, we can take a little bit of the burnt umber. And again, it doesn't matter if it doesn't look sort of perfect. So we're obviously using light layers, so we've still got a lot of ability to sort of lighten up. And then again, a bit more of the raw umber. And I can't really explain this other than I'm just trying to draw in what I can see. So any lines, like for the darker bits along the top, they're quite thin, but we're just going to put them in with a little bit of the burnt umber. Just going to play around with a little bit of cream in those lighter areas as well. This might be a little bit too bright, but again, we can just tone it down. And then at the top here, where we've got a little bit more of the sort of really light areas, we're just going to take a little bit of cold grey 1. And oh, there's the bulldog. Again, doesn't have to be perfect because this is literally quite impossible. Just want to create the illusion, and one of the best things we can do at this point as well is start to look at going in with some of the darker colours, because again, it's going to be those darker colours that really pull everything together at this point. So the darker colours that I'm going to refer to here is the dark sepia, which is the 175. And again, it just means we can just gently kind of create those darker shapes. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. There's a little like bit of like detail right at the bottom here, which I mean you can put in if you like, but like you can just sort of put in with a bit of green gold maybe. Once you've put in a bit of the cream, you might sort of be able to just tone it sort of down and make it a little bit darker with a bit of the green gold, just to give it that bit of something extra. And then again, we're just going to take the dark sepia. And again, just layering in a little bit more of the burnt umber. And again, the green gold. And you're just going between the dark sepia and the burnt umber. Then again, a little bit more cream. And we can kind of just start to work in a little bit more of those highlights. Using a bit of the cold grey one as well. I think if you just come sort of just around the top, that's going to help make it look a little bit more realistic actually. Just give it a bit more dimension to the top area. Just bringing, oh god, my voice, bringing down the edges. And then I think I'm just going to use a little bit of the dark sepia just to bring in this sort of chain. It's not a chain, it's like the metal loop. And I'm just going to take a little bit of black just over those darker areas. Again, holding my pencil super close here because I do just want it to look really, really sort of fine. And then I am just going to use a little bit of cold grey one. Just into any areas I've got a bit more sort of light to them. Just refining with a bit of black, just to help darken again. And using a little bit of the raw umber for the yellowy parts. And again, you can definitely go in the darker areas through here and into the sort of little area here with a bit of the dark indigo to really help bring in those contrasts, especially in the darker shadows. And you can just maybe take a little bit of white. Just gently. Okay, so I wasn't sure whether I was going to put the chain on it, but I think it's going to detract a little bit from what I was trying to achieve here, which is obviously teach how to kind of create these really, really beautiful like reflections and shine and blending and everything like that. And I'm just going to add a little bit of more of the Polychromos white. Give it a good sharpen. Just the top bit here. And maybe just adding a bit of white. Some of these brighter areas. So I'm just coming over the back end of it. And just taking a little bit more of the raw umber. And I have got to say, this bit is the most challenging bit for me, because I just don't like drawing reflection or shine. I find it really, it's not like I don't like drawing it, I find these fiddly bits really fiddly. Okay, right, I think I'm obviously just adding maybe a little bit more cream, just bringing that yellowy hue through here. And then I want to just increase the contrast. And we can do this by maybe adding, like I did it earlier, a little bit of like cold grey 4. No, sorry, this is cold grey 3. Just adding a little bit of that cooler sort of hue. A bit like a bluey area. If you really wanted to emphasize the blue areas a bit more, then just take a little bit of sky blue. And actually you can kind of work this against some of the sort of yellowy hue areas. It should just make them pop a little bit more. Again, just working in a bit more of the detail and the contrast. This is literally just like an additional extra, just to help blend in between our dark and our light areas. Especially where we've put in a bit more of the raw, of the dark indigo. And just help carry the two sort of colours together a little bit more. But again, it's very optional at this point. Just to kind of increase that glazed sort of appearance, and then you maybe go in with a little bit more of the middle purple pink. Just to sort of tone it down so it's not too sort of bright and in your face. Okay, I think we're pretty much there for what I wanted to teach for this. I'll just take a little bit more of the burnt umber. And I think we are there. So obviously continue to build, tweak, add colours or add a little bit of depth if you would like. Obviously you've got some other pencil brands, feel free to chuck them in. The Luminance Dark Indigo might work really well for darkening. Maybe a bit of the Light Fast Mars Black, which is a really lovely sort of like maroony black shade, which will work really nicely as well. But I think for actually everything I wanted to cover during this little class, I think I'm pretty much there with it. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I love working on this surface. I just think it makes everything pop so much. I've got a little bit of dust on that. I think it makes everything pop so much, and it just creates the most gorgeous sort of vibrant finish. So I really hope you've enjoyed this class, and I hope you've learned a lot from it about blending and colour theory, you know, how to make areas super dark or appear a lot darker against others. One of the other things I would recommend is taking a photo at this point on your phone. Obviously I'm using a viewfinder of this camera to allow me to assess depth and dimension, but take a photo on your phone, because a lot of the time you'll be able to see things that you can't see automatically. Like, I don't know what happens, but when I take a photo of a drawing, I can just instantly see the bits that I need to change. And also you can just flip it and make it into black and white. And again, it's just, and if you make your reference photo into black and white as well, it's going to allow you to see whether you need to add more depth, whether you need to, you know, add a bit more contrast in certain areas. And it just helps sort of demonstrate values a lot easier as well by doing that. So again, just keep working until you get to sort of a point where you're happy and everything's blended. And I'm just running a little bit of the deep dark red over the top as well, just to help, you know, blend everything together a little bit more. So we don't have any harsh lines, But yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you learned lots from it. Please feel free to tag me on social media if you give this a go. I've got a Facebook page, which is Bethany Vick Coloured Pencil Mastermind, which you can ask any questions in, or you can share with the group. They're all so lovely and all super supportive. But yeah, feel free to tag me on social media, and I really hope you've enjoyed this, and have a wonderful Christmas. So take care, and I'll see you hopefully very soon. As always, sending you so much love. Bye.